Businesses tend to focus on revenue, profits, and getting loyal customers. But how about healthy workplace culture? You're listening to How I Turned the Corner, where Kendra Prospero leads eye-opening conversations that most business leaders avoid. The right way to address employee challenges. Listen to real-life stories of workplace struggles, giving you valuable advice on what must be done to make every employee truly satisfied and fulfilled in their job. This is for leaders who want to create great company cultures and for employees who want to do something to put an end to suffering at work in the most practical ways possible. Here's your host, Kendra.
Being the CEO of a startup is a unique leadership experience, and for employees, a totally different kind of culture. Our guest today built a business from the ground up, found employees, cash, and clients, and has turned the corner into a business that is thriving. He has a phenomenal background, probably one of the smartest people I will talk to. He has a degree in electrical engineering and a PhD in molecular biophysics. He's also a Techstars graduate, and most importantly, has a huge heart for his work. Shar Hugh is the CEO and co-founder of the Helper Bees, a business he started because of a personal story that made him want to change the way our elderly age in place. The Helper Bees works with some of the world's largest insurance carriers to reduce their claims and administrative costs so that they can support older adults who want to age in place at home. He has a wealth of knowledge on attracting talent, what it's like working with two co-founders, what it's like going through an acquisition, and how he's managed to continue to create an environment where people can thrive. I'm really excited to also talk with him about his new director of people and what that's been like for him. So Shar Hugh, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's do a quick update. So 7 years ago, you started the business. Where are you now? Like, tell us how many employees you have. Are you remote? Like, give us some of those that background.
Yeah, sure. So we are at, I think last count is 215 employees. To put that in context, though, I think early 2020, we were about 20 or 23 employees. So
Wow.
It's been a pretty massive ride. We grew to about 200 in the span of roughly 2 to 3 months back in 2020. So it was a pretty significant scaling. If you remember, March 2020 was also a pretty volatile time for us just in general in the world. So it was fun to balance that as well as trying to hit scale. We are pretty much fully remote. I will say we have a presence in Austin. That's our HQ. So around Central Texas, we have a hybrid, so folks can come in whenever they want. Our office space is really meant just for a central meeting spot in the US, where different leaders or employees want to fly in for weeks at a time, can come in and hang out and work and see some other folks.
That's great. Wow. So let's talk about that growth, because it's been my experience working with companies and advising them that to grow that quickly, you need to have the people infrastructure in place. I mean, you've got to have things that attract employees to the organization and then make sure they know what they're actually doing once they're there to be able to grow that quickly. Has that been your experience? Is that what you did?
Yeah, absolutely. So to grow that fast, though, you just have to hire everyone you know. Anybody who's smart doesn't necessarily have to have the exact skill set you want. But at the time, if we're honest with ourselves, we didn't know exactly what skill set we needed in general either. We needed smart, clever people who worked hard, who believed in a mission. And I think if we had that, we could maneuver the individual towards whatever project, product, process we needed to do. So I want to say it was deliberate. It wasn't. We were just hiring everybody we possibly could, anybody in our networks who wanted a job that had really mission focused and understood sort of the general role. That's who we would bring on. But at that point, it hits sort of the machinery of the company. And then that's when we start to imbue a certain amount of culture as we're scaling, and actually invited everybody who joined the company to contribute to the culture because we had not figured it out. We were a group of 20 people in one of our founders' home. And then the pandemic hit and we scaled, and we would love to keep that culture, but we knew it was impossible. So we invited everybody new to sort of participate in molding that.
What did that look like? How did you invite them, and what came out of that?
I think the biggest thing is hiring. I think most CEOs know this. Culture starts at hiring. The good employees are interviewing you as well as you interviewing them. And I think what we did is we had a lot of different people hire. It did not flow through me, did not flow through a founder or even senior executives. Vast majority of the hiring occurred on the ground floor, and everyone's hiring whoever they want. Of course, there's oversight, and there's, we want to make sure that there's the proper checks and balances. But when you decentralize that hiring function, especially when you were scaling that quickly, we saw a pretty significant diversity of employees come in, as opposed to it just being one or two person's idea of who we ought to bring in. So that doesn't answer the culture bit, but I think who you hire, who you bring in from a diversity perspective definitely affects culture and brings that together. And I think we had an edict right when you hit the floor, or the company. I do it today still when I do coffees with new employees. I tell them their job is to help encourage culture. It is an active thing, and they're part of it now.
That's great. So how would you describe your culture?
So first, we're mission driven. So you gave a great preamble on who we are as a company. We're here to change the way older adults age within America first, and then globally perhaps second. That has to resonate with you. It doesn't always with everybody. Me 18 years ago would not have cared, honestly. Right. Just was not on my radar. So that absolutely has to be a big deal, because what we do, from building tech to doing customer service, can sometimes feel far removed for a mission. Because if I'm writing a line of code, I don't necessarily know how that fits with aging in place. And so our job from a culture perspective is to remind individuals that it is really germane to the aspect of aging in America, not only today, but ideally tomorrow and many years to come. So it's just reminders of success stories. We publish testimonials every single week in a weekly update email that I send out, which reminds folks of all of their hard work when it interacts with an older adult or their family, how that is perceived by the individual. So that's one. You have to be mission driven. And I think early on, and still to this day, is autonomy. Even among unproven or new employees, we hired you because you're smart and you're clever and you're interesting and you believe in our mission. Go do really cool things within the confines of the goals, and don't sweat some of the smaller stuff. So I think that's another big part of our culture, which is very early on, relatively junior employees that were new to the company were making their own decisions day one.
And were they good decisions? Do you have any regrets about that?
No regrets at all. There's no way we could have micromanaged it. I'm sure that there were a lot of mistakes, and that's fine. You learn from those, but I don't think there's a way we could have hit scale with everything routing through sort of one conduit.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I find it to be one of the biggest pitfalls of growing companies is that the leader or the leaders feel like they need to be involved with every decision that's being made. And there's just a limit to how much we can do. And so if we make that happen, then not only do we slow down growth, but we slow down innovation, I think.
Yeah.
Because we don't have all the ideas.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as a leader, you have to be very conscious as where you put your time, where you put your energy, because you can't do all of it, right, from a prioritization schema. And so it sounds really cool. You give everybody this awesome autonomy. They just magically made the right answer or took the right pathway. That's definitely not what happens. Instead, the leadership now focuses on teaching and mentorship of what are our core principles? How do we want to be as a company? And you spend a lot of time with the leaders that matter. And then that gets sort of distilled down to everybody else. And so that autonomy now is guided. It cannot just be, I do not want to cast it as we were so clever, hired really smart people, and they just pushed us naturally. It was all organic. It was definitely not the case.
Yeah. So what was, I mean, tell us a little bit about what I mean, it's kind of unique to have three co-founders in this business. And what has it been like having this kind of a relationship with the three of you?
Yeah, so not only three co-founders, but I've known them all for more than half my life. So one of them is my brother-in-law, and he married my oldest sister. So he's known me since I was 12. And then, so that's family and two other and sort of three total founders. Our CTO, I went to sort of a boarding high school program together. We went to college early at 16. So I've known him since I was 16. So it's people who have seen me do very dumb things throughout my entire life. So that's a challenge, but I think what it allows for is a tremendous amount of trust and hopefully occasionally respect for each other, where we just know each other's weaknesses and argument points. And I think that trust, when times are really challenging, which we've had many of them, that who do you want to go and solve problems with? And that's where I think actually having two founders is really a valuable experience. I talk to other sole founders. I'm like, that is hard. I there's no way I could do it because it's an emotional journey. You're going to be racked with self-doubt. There's a lot of different pathways to travel, and having people who are as bought in as you to argue against is a very nice feeling. Just to like yell at people who are, again, quite literally as invested in the company as you are is great.
There are pitfalls though. I get called in probably too often to deal with founder drama and personality mismatches. I mean, you guys probably don't have that because you've got such a long history together. But when you're talking to other founders and they think about taking on a partnership, what advice would you give them around that? I mean, not everybody has this advantage of having family and a long-term friend to be co-founder who's as smart as you.
Well, I mean, we definitely have personality challenges, especially as we hit scale. As an early stage company, we were do everything you could, run really fast, move quickly, break things, all whatever cliche you want to use. But as we've grown up as a company and have checks and balances, we have to see our personalities have changed. We've brought in more leaders too. So our C-suite's now filled out, and that's really challenging. It's no longer just us three. We have to broaden who we bring into our circle. So it has not always been easy, and it is not currently easy, I want to say, even with what I think is quite a bit of the strengths. But Ida, your question around how do you select another founder? I mean, it's tough because, as you undoubtedly know, you can't predict where you're going to head. It's funny because I think entrepreneurs have to be optimists, but I'm a bit of a pessimist among the sea of optimism, which is assume it's going to go wrong.
Right.
Everything is going to go wrong. Do you want to work with that person? And I think establishing clear boundaries to have arguments and discussions is really critical. So even though we knew each other well and we were family, it actually raises the bar of what's at stake. It's no longer just a company. It's a relationship that is important to you for the rest of your life and that you've had for more than half your life. What's more important, a company or that? Well, it's obviously the personal relationship. So we establish boundaries where I use this to this day. It's like, I'm going to put CEO hat on right now. We're going to talk. And I'm going to take this off, and we're friends, and we're going to go have a beer together. And I think our ability to be able to segment those, quite literally saying, I'm putting my hat on, right? I'm putting my work hat on. Or do you want to talk work right now when I'm over at my mom's house having dinner on Thanksgiving? And the answer could be no, and then we're done. Like, we're not going to talk about it, and we'll put it away. So no matter what, I think you would have to establish those boundaries with your potential co-founders, because you're going to get in a lot of really awesome arguments, and it's going to be fun. And you want to know how each individual handles that.
For sure. Yeah. I find it's usually the folks that don't know how to lean into those difficult discussions that really struggle, because then they start to build up this resentment over time, and then it just explodes out of them at one point. And then the relationship is either ruined or severed, or something terrible happens to the business. So that's great that you guys have figured out those boundaries.
Are figuring out currently, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all relationships are ever changing, right? That's why you stay married for many years. It takes a long time to really figure that out, assuming people stay married a long time. But yes, like, talk about how now you continue to elevate each other and challenge each other as a team. Like, let's just start with your executive team now, outside of just the three founders. But how do you continue to keep that conversation moving as an executive team?
It's something that we're learning through now. I founded other companies before this. As you mentioned, I was a scientist, but this is the first venture-backed company that has hit this amount of scale. And so for the first time, I think, although I've been a business owner and business operator, I'll say this is the first time I've been a CEO. So within a company that's 6 years old, I think I've only truly been CEO for a year and a half, maybe two. So a really short, narrow window in time. So I think it's elevating the team. I have been really clear with all the new executives of, I want you to elevate me. You're going to teach me something that I don't know. You come from a lot of background. You've got a lot of successes. That's why we hired you. You need to teach me something. We've learned quite a bit along our way of how to deliver services at scale. Everything is on fire, how to remain calm, and how to be really thoughtful in how we grow the team. And I think that I've just approached it as a learning experience. And it's served ourselves well. We've have great CFO, great COO, and a couple of CEOs now on different business divisions that have a ton more experience than I do, or maybe even other co-founders. And I think it's for trying to find this common ground, which is our mission. That's unique. Nobody has worked in a company like ours, and being able to push and pull on each other on our strengths and weaknesses and learn from each other towards this particular vision. And I think that's how we elevate, which is always casting it as like, where are we heading as a company, and what kind of company do we want to be if we were to attain that goal, and challenging ourselves constantly on that. I found to be really, at least right now, it seems to be gelling properly.
So as a CEO then, I mean, what's your job description? What would you define as your things that you do as the CEO?
Yeah. You're hitting me at a tough time. I don't know. I asked myself this question last week, or Monday of this week. Like, what is my job now? I got all the C-suite. I used to run all of operations. I was our finance guy. I do all of the fundraising. I do all the sales, marketing, and now I've got a big team of individuals who can do all of that. So I am trying to answer that question. As you mentioned, it's sort of evolving over time, and so now people are saying, well, you label CEOs, and you probably have seen this, where you have the visionary CEO, or the subject matter expert CEO, or the operational focused CEO. Where do I fit on that spectrum? As I'm trying to figure that out. I think ultimately, though, it is ensuring that the direction of the company is the right direction long term, and that we are doing the things necessary to accomplish that tomorrow, but also in 3 years. And I think that is my particular job, is to operate in, this is my view of it, to operate in a time scale of immediacy. So short term, what's going to happen tomorrow at the end of the week, and then also where are we going to head in 3, 5, hopefully 10 years.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate your vulnerability on that, because it is, as a fellow CEO, there's a lot of head trash that can come. Yeah. And I've personally defined my role currently as, my job is to be the head inspirer. I need to keep my team inspired. So about once every other week or so, I do try to come up with something that ties them back to the mission of what we do, to remind them what we're doing. I also am the leader in terms of making decisions. Like, somebody has to do that. And then capital, got to make sure payroll is getting made. And then the one I added in last year was, I'm also the person in charge of handling the jerks. So I don't want my team to have to deal with that. Yeah. And so that's my current job description. So, sometimes it can be maybe a little more ethereal than even what you said before. I don't know.
Do you then overlay that with what you want to do?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, because I want to do this sort of thing. I want to do this, and I want to be still out there spreading the brand and the message, and, thinking about how to really end suffering in the workplace, which is what we do. So yeah, that part of it is also really important. So, but I think keeping my team motivated, keeping them inspired to do the work, is probably the thing I'm working the most on right now.
Yeah.
Because it's tough. Work is hard right now.
It's challenging. Everything from macroscopic to even your local environment is challenging. And I think as a CEO, as your company changes quickly or slowly, even founders, that going from founder to what I will say is what a real-ish CEO, I struggle with that question I just asked you, which is, this is what I should be doing, or this is what I am doing. This is what I should be doing. Hopefully there's some overlap there. And this is what I want to do. Hopefully there's a lot of overlap there. And I think what's interesting as founders who have hit scale in early stage companies that want scale is asking, you have the opportunity to ask the question of, do I want to be doing that? Which is very different from early stages where you had no luxury to ask that question. Of course, you're going to be doing everything. Of course, I'm the one physically running payroll. Of course, I'm the one doing all of these different tasks, like doing the taxes and everything. But now, as less and less is you have to do it, that list is shorter and shorter. And now you get to choose what you want to do. And that is actually surprisingly hard to deal with.
What do you want to do?
I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. What am I good at? What does a company need? And what does that intersection? What does that Venn diagram look at, like on all of these things?
Right.
And it depends on where the company is at. And I think as a founder, you have a vision for why you founded the company. And I think rooting yourself in that and how can you best execute on that is a really internal question that I think takes a long time to answer.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know for me, I was a software engineer before this. I worked for IBM. I hated that job. I was good at it, but I hated it. And because it wasn't my personality. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if the journey is really looking at also what really lights you up. What's the work that you do that time flows, it goes by quickly. And at the end of it, you feel like you had a great accomplishment. That's probably where you want to be spending more of your time as the business continues to evolve. And then you outsource and you delegate everything else that you're not great at, or that doesn't give you that same feeling. I think we run on adrenaline in the early days where we can just do anything, right? And get it done. And I mean, I can't believe how much work I got done in the early days of my business. Now I'm like, I don't have that vigor anymore.
Yeah, it is challenging because what's fun in the early days is you are doing everything. And that means it's constant stimulation. And I think you found a company because you love that. You love testing your mettle out there against the world and your ideas and modifying it and trying to succeed on that. But I think even though I don't know what I want to be doing, I have a general idea. The undercurrent is always, I want to learn more. So even things I'm not great at, what's cool about founding a company is as long as it's sort of commerce related, you get to try it out and learn. And it might not be the most fun thing in the world, but gathering that skill set with context that's real life is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So let's switch gears a little bit. What was it like to go through the acquisition?
Yeah, so we acquired a couple companies. One company, the first company we acquired was 3 years ago. They were bigger than us actually, and they were older, so like 26 years old. They've been around for 26 years, and I had never bought a company before. And I had met the founder, sole female founder, had a wonderful story, registered nurse, was doing great work, but needed technology and a bit of a succession plan. And never bought a company. No idea how to even structure it. We had to call our attorneys like, well, how do you actually do I just give them money and they give us it was that basic.
Right.
I had sort of stumbled on what I think is actual experts in the field have told me is true on stuff that is strategic, which is we bonded on our hearts and mind bonded. Like we understood where we each wanted to go. There's a common pathway and we felt like it was better to team up than to go at our separate ways. So that ended up going very well. We, at some point, I think we ended up 8Xing that company in a fairly short amount of time, probably 18 months. Second acquisition we just made about 14 months ago. Same sort of story. We actually, it's funny. Our initial intro call, I almost canceled it because he seemed like a competitor. And I'm like, it's not something I want to do. Him on the other side is like, who am I talking to? We had a mutual contact, do an intro. We both didn't want to take it, but really within 10 minutes, I'm like, our roadmaps are aligning on this. We've got something. We had a little bit of scale and could definitely help execute on that. And they had something where they had built a really interesting tool. And again, hearts and minds sort of bonded. And both of them have been transformative. We've been able to 8 to 10X both of their revenue in a short amount of time. That just shows how people aligned on a vision and on a mission and then have resources to go and execute on those can really change a whole lot in this world.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So what do you think the employee journey was like? I mean, what was it like for your existing employees at the Helper Bees when you brought these two companies on?
It's a challenge because you never know whether acquisition is going to go through. So how much do you share with your employees that you're doing it, right? Because you don't want to exclude them, but you also have no idea whether it will happen. So I just aired on at least with the first one, at least was just like really being openly and talking about it. And then same with the second, because we actually started both companies, we started working together before the paperwork was signed. That was a conscious decision of mine to say, I'll give you my time. I'll give you a lot of my team's time because I just assume we're going to do well together. And why should we wait? So the teams in both instances got to start to work together. I don't think everybody knew that what we were trying to do, but enough folks did. And so when it happened, it was kind of met with a cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Like sort of like a natural thing. Now, how do you integrate the companies? That's just sort of a different story when it comes as people are scaling up. But yeah, I think it was met with a collective, okay, we saw this 7 months in the making or whatever it ended up being.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. So you didn't use this word, but being a little bit more transparent with it. So it wasn't just this like thrown upon everybody change. It was a little bit more experienced along the way and you were able to be transparent about it. Yeah. Maybe not what the final outcome was going to be, but at least working together. Yeah,
because there's so many ways. I mean, it's same like fundraising, right? Like your team close to you knows that you're sort of honing in on something, but you don't want to jinx yourself or whatever you want to say. Because deals can fall apart at the last minute. But if you bring your team along for the ride, I mean, now if I introduce a partner company to them, I think 1 in 4 they're going to ask me, "Are you looking to buy them outright?" So they know now the playbook.
Mm-hmm. your cards are on the table, so to speak, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so then I guess the final piece here, because I don't want to take up too much time, talk a little bit about what are you doing now for your staff? You've got these 200 employees continuing to grow. What do you feel like you need to be doing now to continue to really elevate them?
I think, it's challenging in this environment. We've got employees, I think in last count was 40 or 42 different states. Vast majority we're not going to see in person. How do you foster, I keep leaning on this mission-driven approach, but how do you foster that feeling of connectedness when you're working at home in a state where you don't have another employee? I mean, a lot of leaders are dealing with this now. So I think the way that we can elevate our employees is to create an atmosphere. Maybe it's just on Slack, or maybe it's on virtual rooms. It's a combination of all of those sorts of things where you feel connected and part of an organization that's doing good in this world. Like, you really need to feel a part of it. And I think we don't have it figured out completely. I think we do a heck of a job at it, but it's still early days for us. And can we maintain that as we continue to scale, maybe by other companies, but definitely scale and add more employees? How do we keep that feeling of the first employee the first day of a new employee, I open my MacBook up and who do I talk to? Like, I can't turn to anybody. Like that has driven us ever since the first day, which is like, have their calendar booked, have a buddy booked within their department, also cross department, and get an exec to talk to them. So that I just can't imagine the loneliness you must feel when you open your laptop and you have one meeting. Like, what the heck do you do?
All right.
And so I think our job is to foster a sense of connectedness, because it allows information to flow. Like, we have been built, I think our strength is being able to hear different ideas, hear different complaints, and act upon them. And if we have people who aren't connected to us, we never get that data input, and we are worse off because of it. Mm-hmm. So our jobs as leaders is to ensure that data flow happens.
And how do you lean on Crystal, your new director of people, for that?
She's been great because it's a full-time job is thinking not only recruiting. Her team does a lot of the recruiting now. So we do have a recruiting functionality, but hiring managers are integral into that process. And so we're still keeping that early stage of decentralizing hiring, even though we have a people department. So I think her job is to ensure, we are centralizing it, but still keep a lot of voices involved, because we are a very diverse company and will continue to be that way. And then she's really making us, what she's particularly good at is telling the executive team, like, you need to be thinking about this. Like, and when I mentioned the connectedness and hearing the voices, it's so much harder as an exec where, like, I'm booked on Zoom calls now 8 hours a day. I'm not following everything. And she's the one who's saying, your company, broader than your executive team, thinks about this now, and grabbing us and saying, you got to think about it. And I think that's incredibly valuable to be a representative of the voice of the rest of the company.
That's great. I think that's a great move that you've made, bringing her in and having that broader team, because somebody needs to be thinking about the people and what they need. And if nobody's doing that, then that's when you start to see culture erode and you get an accidental culture, which you don't want.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we grew that quickly, the first senior-ish role we brought on was people.
That's amazing.
That was the very first role. Is because it's everything, right?
Yeah.
How you onboard, and if you flub that, I mean, it's really hard to come back from.
I love that. You're singing my song there. Well, on that note, I would love to I just want to thank you for your time today. I really appreciate this and hearing your story. And to everyone who's listened in, thank you for listening to today's episode of How I Turned the Corner with Shar Hugh. We will see you hopefully on the next episode. And Shar, we'll follow up in a couple months and hear how you're doing as well.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for joining this exciting episode. We hope this discussion brings you closer to a better, healthier, and more rewarding workplace everyone deserves to be a part of. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast at turningthecornerllc.com/podcast. Don't forget to share this with your friends in the corporate world. And together, let's make this space a hub of growth and job satisfaction. If everyone loves where they are, they can always give their best without regrets. That's all for now. See you on the next one.